The last pool game in this year's Rugby World Cup was played in Toulouse between Portugal and Fiji today. The game just finished a few minutes ago. In this video, I'm going to review that amazing game of rugby. G'day and welcome to Inside Rugby with Mark. I'm a Kiwi rugby fan living here in beautiful Mexico, and in this video I'm going to talk about that sensational game that just finished a few minutes ago between Portugal and Fiji. Now, Portugal were the last team to qualify for this year's Rugby World Cup by doing an outstanding game against the United States and keeping them away from France this particular year. So it's going to be really intriguing because we went into this last game with a scenario that could have unfolded if Fiji didn't get 1 point from this game. Then Eddie Jones and his Wallaby crew were going to be through to the quarterfinals to play England in the quarterfinal number 3 next Sunday. So it was all on the line for Fiji. And as we saw with them against Georgia last week, they got a little bit nervous when they went into a game with a favourites tag on, and that's exactly what happened in this particular game. Portugal had never won a game in this year's Rugby World Cup, so it was all on the line for them and their coach Patrice Lagister, who was in charge of the team for the last time today in this particular match. His tenure as the coach of the Portugal team has come to an end. So it was going to be fascinating to see what would happen, whether or not Fiji would go in with their nerves being rattled, or whether Portugal were going to come and stand up and do something sensational in their last game in this year's Rugby World Cup. Well, as the game got underway, we got into a pretty scrappy affair, and it even got worse as the first half went on. And I thought around about the 20-minute mark, I thought, oh, this is a little bit like watching two schoolboys teams play on a Saturday afternoon. It was that bad. But there were so many errors that were going on from both teams, and it was obvious that both teams didn't want to lose this game, and they were playing like it. And unfortunately, I think due to the heat and humidity, we also had what we experienced earlier in the tournament, where players had a lot of hard time handling the ball. So we saw a lot of drop balls in this game. And I think a lot of that was down to the conditions that the teams were experiencing, particularly in that first half. It seemed to be that nobody could hold on to a ball. So really in the first opening exchanges, it was both teams having an opportunity to run the ball, but they'd drop it or they'd turn it over or they'd kick it. And we saw a lot of kicking ping-pong game between the two teams as well in that first period of play, and it wasn't a very attractive game at all. Now, the first opportunity for a kick for goal came to Fiji, and Frank Lamani, their halfback, stepped up and to take this kick, and I haven't seen possibly a worse kick at goal in my life that actually went over. And it was quite amazing, and I thought this was going to be one of Fiji's problems today in this game. And Kuravoli, who's my favourite number 9 for Fiji, wasn't playing in this game, so he must be injured, and they had to settle with Lamani. And also I don't think Lamani's their number 1 halfback at all, and that showed at different times throughout this game, but his kicking did come good, so I'll give him a good mark for that. But the first penalty kick at goal, it scraped over. Fiji were ahead 3 points to 0, and starting to put a little bit of scoreboard pressure on Portugal, even though Portugal had created many great phases of play and getting down into the Fiji 22. So yeah, that first 20 minutes was really a stuttering, scrappy game, and both sides were having trouble with the conditions and also just the tempo of the game. Both teams wanted to try and run the ball, I think, and have an open game. But there was a lot of errors that led to the game breaking down in all sorts. But there were some big hits going in from both teams, and I was very impressed, in fact, with Portugal's defence. When Fiji did get the ball, they were scrambling and they were up in the Fijian backs very, very quickly. So it was quite impressive the way that Portugal had come into this game from a defensive point of view. And when they had the ball in hand, the wings of Mata and Storti looked very dangerous and looked like they could score tries from anywhere on the field, actually, even though they were having quite a number of errors in that first period of play. Now, Semi Rairaka wasn't playing for Fiji in this game. He's got a bit of a hamstring twinge, so they left him out of the starting 23, and Harbosi was on. I really like Harbosi. He brings a lot of energy to wherever he plays in the Fijian team, and that's another skill that he has. He can play in a number of positions, so he was taking over from Radradra today, and he played really well in that opening 40 minutes of the game. He was really good on a couple of decisive breaks that he got through the Portuguese defence, and he did actually set up a few opportunities for Fiji, but unfortunately once again their handling let them down, and they either dropped the ball or the ball was stolen in the breakdowns by Portugal, and they were doing very well in that area of the field. So just before half time, Portugal got a penalty opportunity. They took that, and it was 3-3 as we went into half time. And I guess the best way to sum up the first half of this game was fairly disappointing. And Fiji just looked absolutely terrible with this pressure that they have on them of being a favourite for a game. And also, I guess, the added pressure of going into this game knowing that they had to get 1 point to survive and get through to the quarterfinals. So I think at half-time, Simon Rawalu, the coach of the Fijian team, would have tried to settle the boys down a little bit, because I think they were just letting the adrenaline run a little bit too much, and they were making too many unforced errors, and this was giving the opportunity to Portugal in the game. I think the more open the game was, the more it was suiting the Portuguese team, and they just really took a lot of opportunities when the ball was breaking down in different parts of the play. They also stole a couple of lineouts off Fiji in that first half, so that was good work from the Portugal team. But the Fiji scrum looked very dominant in that first half, and it won them a couple of penalties, in fact. I think the Portuguese coach, Patrice Lagesse, would have said to the Portuguese team, just keep doing it, your opportunities are going to come. They were very close to breaking through the Fiji line a couple of times, and when they did break through, they were tackled in the last line of defence by Fiji, who were scrambling quite good at the back. But both coaches would have wanted their teams to tidy up their game and try and be a little bit more accurate in the second half of this game. Boy, did we get a different second half of rugby. You couldn't have two contrasting halves of rugby in a game. It was just absolutely fascinating. So Portugal came out in the second half, and for the first few minutes they really dominated play. They were looking for line breaks, and finally they got through the Fijian defence and scored their first try. And what a try it was, absolutely ripper from Lote, who went down the right hand side, a magnificent put down in the corner with a couple of Fijian attackers on his back, and it was just a tremendous try by Portugal, and it got them really pumped up with adrenaline going through their veins to get into the lead of this game. And one of the things I loved about this game was the Portugal fans in the crowd. They were absolutely fantastic. They were buoyant all the time, whether Fiji were in the lead or whether Portugal were in the lead. And when they scored that try early on in the second half, in the 45th minute, the Portuguese fans erupted in the stadium. Storti the try, Marquez the conversion, and we had Portugal out to 10 points to 3. And were they on the way to winning their first ever Rugby World Cup game? Well, there was still a lot of play to go in this game, and as usually happens in games like this, just a couple of minutes later the opposition come back. Fiji got a fantastic break up through the middle, went straight back onto attack, huge forwards, pick and roll, and that man Levani Botia went over for a fantastic try to Fiji right on the Portugal line under a number of people. It was a fantastic effort from Fiji, a great breakout before that took them all the way up into the Portugal 22, and from that a couple of rolling mauls, and there we were, Fiji were in for a try. So the try to Botia in the 47th minute to Fiji, the conversion was successful from Lamani, and we had a game on our hands. It was 10 points each heading into the last 25 or 30 minutes of this game. And boy, did the game really come alive. Even though we still had a bit of a scrappy game going on, it became more connected as different phases of play started to continue, and we had obviously the benches coming on as well at different stages throughout that second half. But the game really opened up. There became a bit of a seesawing battle, and the whole energy of the game just kept increasing as the game went on. You could feel it, and I imagine if you're in the stadium to watch that game today, it would have been really spectacular. So just 2 minutes after his great try, Botia unfortunately did a high tackle. He was shown a yellow card, and Fiji were down to 14 men for 10 minutes as Botia went off, and couldn't argue about that one. He slid up a bit high, but there were mitigating circumstances, so we would see Botia back on the field in this game. But it was going to be really interesting to see how Portugal would try and take advantage of this opportunity of Fiji being down to 14 men. And that's exactly what they did. Just 2 minutes later, after Lote had gone off, Portugal were once again making a break down towards the Fiji line. They got into a pick and maul situation, and Fernandes, their wonderful prop, went over for a great try, his first try for Portugal, and that try was converted by Marquez, and all of a sudden we had Portugal out to 17 points to 10. And that 20-minute period, that first 20-minute period of the second half was really, really interesting, because after that try from Portugal, Fiji came back into the game again. They had lots of different phases heading to the Portugal line, but Portugal's defence was absolutely fantastic, and they really stuck it to Fiji, and there were some big hits going in from these Portuguese players because they were really nailing each of the Fijian runners. And it was only when Fiji had really open, broken play that they looked super dangerous in this game. When they kept the ball close and they were doing pick and rolls, it seems as though the Portugal team had their measure when it came to defence. And what was fantastic for me in this game from Portugal, and the depths and courageous braveness of their defence was fantastic, because their coach came out and said, look, we're super tired from last week's game. We haven't really recovered properly. The boys have been training hard, and we're a little bit afraid we're going to run out of gas. But they really put on the pressure between that 40 and 60 minute mark in this game, and they kept Fiji out during that period, and that was really, really important, I think, as far as giving them inspiration and belief in this game that they could actually go away with their first win in a Rugby World Cup. 20-minute period of the second half, Portugal won that by 14 points to 7 on the scoreboard, and it really gave them an opportunity to go into the last 20 minutes of this game. But you could tell that Fiji weren't finished, and they were coming back, and as soon as Lote came back on the ground, you saw Fiji lift again. 56th minute of the game, we saw Fernandes for Portugal getting subbed off. He really hurt his arm. It looked like he might have even dislocated it. He was a try scorer for Portugal, so he got a huge standing ovation when he went off. It was great to see, and it'll be a memory that lasts in his mind forever after what happened at the end of this game. So a fantastic performance by Fernandes. I thought he was really, really good in this game. He got muscled around a little bit in the scrums today, but in open play he was very good in defence. He was having a very, very big game. So it's 17 points to 10 to Portugal going into the last 20 minutes, and it was going to be exciting to see whether they could hold on or whether Fiji were going to come screaming back at them. And one of the big things that happened in that last 20 minutes was in the 61st minute, when Salivu, the captain of Fiji, was taken off. He hurt his knee in a bad fall that he had when he was trying to tackle a player, and he didn't come to grips with that after a while, so they decided to take him off, possibly with bigger things in mind. But it was a shame to see him go off. He's a really, really good player, and he brings a lot of presence to this Fiji team, not only as their captain, but he really gets their backline moving as well. So I thought this was going to have a big impact on Fiji in that last 19 minutes, that he wasn't going to be on the field. A few minutes after Salivu went off for Fiji, we had Pinto going off for Portugal. He'd played at fullback and had played a really good game, I thought. He was instrumental in getting the Portuguese into some breaks in the game, and he hasn't played a lot of rugby lately, so he was really, really feeling it, so they had to take him off and replace him with some fresh legs. But Pinto played a really outstanding game for Portugal, I thought, as did their back three. I thought they were outstanding in this game. But Fiji were not done and dusted, and in the 67th minute, Doge went over for a fantastic try after a rolling maul again from Fiji. Those big, heavy forwards were not going to be denied, and Fiji were right back into the game. So it was 17-15 with a kick to come, and Lamani stood up and got another conversion over. So we were back to 17 all with about 13 minutes to go. And then for the next sort of 5 or 7 minutes, Fiji took a little bit of control of the game. They slowed it down a bit. They punched their way back up through the middle, and they got 2 penalty opportunities, and Lamani got both of those over. So all of a sudden we saw Fiji out to 23 points to 17 with just a few minutes to go in the game, and I thought at this stage that Fiji had probably done enough. A few minutes later, because Portugal went on the attack once again. A fantastic play down the right hand side, an opportunistic play by Storti, who got the ball, shot off down the right hand side, came inside, put the pass on to Mata, who went over with about 15 metres to spare from the touchline, and this gave Marquez an opportunity to kick the goal, and win the game for Portugal, which he did do. So the pressure on Marquez to kick that goal must have been absolutely enormous, knowing that one, it was his last game for Portugal, so it's going to be the last act that he would perform for his Portugal national rugby team. It was going to mean they'd win their first ever game in a Rugby World Cup, and he slotted it like an absolute cool cucumber. Fantastic stuff from Marquez. And what a win it was from Portugal. 24 points to 23, the final score, and nobody would discredit Portugal for this win. It was a fantastic comeback in the second half. They never died, they never said never, and they carried on picking and rolling, and defence was huge. The defence won them this game, that's for sure, because they kept Fiji out a number of times in that first 20 minutes of the second half, which I thought was absolutely pivotal to this game. Fantastic win by Portugal. They scored 3 tries to 2. Their tries went to Storti, Mata and Fernandez, and the 2 tries to Fiji went to Baltia and to Doge. So fantastic performance. Lamani got all his kicks over, even though some of them look like some of my hooks off the first tee, but he was able to slot those points for Fiji. They came up short in this game, and I think, you know what, this was a good thing for Fiji, because I think now we can start talking about quarterfinal rugby, and we can start talking about what's going to happen next weekend. They needed to get this game out of the way. For Portugal, they're going to leave the World Cup as heroes back home in Portugal. It was a fantastic win. It was history for Portugal in this year's Rugby World Cup, and it was also a very nice thing to happen to those players that are retiring after this Rugby World Cup, along with Patrice Lagesse, their coach, who's going to be moving on to other things. So all in all, it was probably a fairy tale win for Portugal today in Pool C in the last pool game of this year's Rugby World Cup. And as a result of saying that, I don't want to particularly focus on one player within the Portugal team that was a standout for me. There was the likes of Storti and Mata and Pinto that played very well at the back, and Marquez was always very good at halfback. But across the whole field, I think the whole 23 players from Portugal today deserve the credit for winning that game, because they all put it on the line when it counted. And after that very scrappy and simply terrible first half, they came out and they played some rugby, and they got some phases of play together. But their defence, they came as a collective unit, and they said to Fiji, if you're going to be good enough, you're going to be able to beat us, but we're going to stand here man to man and try and stop you. And that's exactly what Portugal did in that second half, and absolute kudos to them. So my cheer out today goes to every single player, the 23 of them that stood up today for Portugal to get their historic win against Fiji. Now, what did we learn about Fiji in this game? Well, for the second week in a row, we learned they're not good at being favourites in a game, and I think that's going to work in their favour as they go into the quarterfinal match against England next Sunday in the quarterfinal number 3 that's going to be played. And I think Simon Rawalui has got some issues, because there's a lot of injuries now in this Fiji team. We saw Tuasova go off. Nyasia Levu's injured as well from today's game. And we've got those players that didn't play in today's game and how they're going to fare coming back next week. So it's going to be a couple of days, and when I do my preview video of the game against England and Fiji, I'll be able to give you an update on what's happening with those injuries. And I think that's going to be a really critical part as we go into that game between Fiji and England next weekend. So although Eddie Jones and his boys would have been quite excited at different times during that game today, they will be on their Qantas flight heading back to Australia now, with their confirmation that they're out of the Rugby World Cup for 2023, and they can continue their rebuilding process with that. So let's have a look at Pool C and how it's ended in this year's Rugby World Cup. And we've got the 2 teams of Wales and Fiji going through to the quarterfinals next weekend, and I'm going to be doing all the previews for those games and putting out videos this week about my thoughts around different teams. We're going to be checking out all the injuries that are happening to all of the teams, because a lot of teams have got major injury concerns as they head into this week leading up to the quarterfinals. So you're going to be able to find that all here on Inside Rugby with Mark. So why don't you hit that subscribe button, give me an opportunity to show to you that I'm working hard to bring you all this World Cup news from France. So it's going to be a really exciting week as we head into this week now. We've got some huge games coming up next weekend. I'll be putting out a video tomorrow, Monday, my time, to talk about some of those games, and just to confirm to you all who's actually going to be playing in the quarterfinals in the 2023 Rugby World Cup from France. It was a fantastic last pool game today from Fiji and Portugal. That second half really turned the game around. It came to life and we saw the best winner in the end, I think, in Portugal, who thoroughly deserved their win. Hats off to them, fantastic performance. And now Fiji can calm down a little bit, get rid of the nerves and get ready to go again against England. A lot of recovery and rebuilding needed. To the rugby fans of the Fijian rugby team, congratulations, you're through to the Rugby World Cup quarterfinals, and that's nothing to be sneezed at. It's a very, very good performance. You've played well in this tournament and you're going to have to really step up now as you take on England next week. But a great performance by all the Fijian team and all of the people associated with that team. To everyone watching my video who's a fan of the Portugal rugby team, and I'm sure there's many more thousands of you now, well done to you all. I think this has been an incredible run by Portugal at this year's Rugby World Cup. They've really shown us what a bit of heart and passion can really do, but also with some good skill set and some great coaching as well. So wonderful performances by Portugal. I thoroughly enjoyed watching the games. Today's game and also that game against Georgia was special. And I think you can go away with your heads held very, very high because of your performance. And I look forward to seeing you back at it in 4 years' time and seeing what you can do in the next episode of the Rugby World Cup. So fantastic performance by Portugal. So there we go. That's the end of the pool competition at this year's Rugby World Cup from France. It's been absolutely fascinating. There's been some hell belters of some games, but we're running into the next weekend of amazing quarterfinals. It's going to be super exciting, and I'd love you to stick around with me here on Inside Rugby with Mark. Don't forget to drop me your comments on the Fiji and Portugal game today. Let me know what you think of that game, whether you're from the Fiji or Portugal side of things. And if you're a neutral rugby fan as well, I'd love to hear your comments on that particular game. It really turned around in the second half. Now I'm going to be making lots of videos, as I said, about the previews of the quarterfinals coming up this week, and lots of other interesting stuff that you may not find on any other rugby channel. So stick here with me throughout that period. Until next time, thanks very much for watching my videos. Stay well, stay safe everybody out there, and I'll see you again soon right here on Inside Rugby. Until then, bye for now.